come to be here standing shoulder to shoulder with all of you. I come from a working class family in Trenton, New Jersey, though I've been proudly Canadian for over 20 years. Mine is an incredibly loving and loud and opinionated family that crosses a wide political spectrum. One of my grandfathers was a printer, and the other was a street sweeper who turned firefighter. That firefighter, my pop, and my grandmother raised their family in the house that he grew up in. It was literally across the street from Trenton State Prison. We used to throw snowballs over the wall. He was really, not cool, but you know, we were kids. He was really old school and gruff, but he also came to all of my games. And every time I did really well, he'd hug me and say, every time you think you're the best, remember there's somebody behind you who's better. And I think he meant that to be motivational and to remind me to always try harder and keep working, but it was a really weird thing to say to an 8-year-old. That said, he also brought my brother and me donuts every Sunday, so we always knew we had something to look forward to. I have, however, spent a fair bit of my life reflecting on his words of wisdom, and it does turn out that he was right. There's always somebody better coming up right behind you. Young workers, emerging leaders, new activists, and we should always be working to be better ourselves. But we also need to remember to turn around to that next emerging leader right behind us and reach out a hand so that we can work and learn together, so that we can use our collective strength to build something better than any of us can individually. And we also need to know that there's always hope, not just that somebody's gonna buy you a donut, but a possibility of building something better, moving to a better future, and knowing that we are not alone in that project and that journey. Many of us have just come through some of the most difficult times of our working and personal lives. This pandemic has reshaped our work and our lives in ways none of us could have anticipated. And we're gonna feel the consequences in our workplace, our sectors, our regions, our locals, our families, our communities for years to come. And these feel like once in a lifetime times, and they may well be. But even in the face of the brain fog, the exhaustion that COVID has brought to everyone, we've also risen to the challenges and reached out to each other in a million different ways. And that is how we're gonna make the changes we need in the days ahead together. I want to share something about my past. It was another pandemic, and it seems like a lifetime ago. When I was 17, I headed off to university with scholarship and student debt in hand, just as another pandemic's impact was building. I was already out, and the young men around me, my friends, started getting sick and dying in unbelievable numbers. And some of you may remember what it was like in the early days of HIV and AIDS. I went to school in Central Ohio, which in the late 1980s was not a hotbed of acceptance for LGBTQ positive folks or plus folks. There was a lot of homophobic violence on campus, at work, in our shelters, and even then, I realized that there was strength in numbers and that solidarity meant power. And so I worked with others around me and we organized, we fought back in demonstrations, in classrooms, through research and lobbying, and we made a difference. The work that we did there resulted in training in the shelters, better supports and education around HIV and AIDS on campus, and the first ever LGBTQ+ office at The Ohio State University. These were important victories, and they would not have been possible without community, solidarity, and organizing. And at every point in my life, when I have run up against a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, I've used the same strategy. Work with others to identify the change you need, then fight together to make that change a reality. Do it in the streets, in the press, in the community, and in the institutional systems, but you do it collectively, because that's the only way we can Look at the organizers of the Amazon Labor Union at Staten Island for an example, right? Look at the couriers and mail clerks in our own local 5119 at Life Labs for another one right here. Like that, I'm always looking for hope, and I've always found it in working with others to make our bit of the world just that much better. In the late 90s and early aughts, I was part of a committee that was dedicated to organizing lesbian and trans events in a supportive setting. And in 2000, one of those events was raided by male officers of the Toronto Police Service. I and another organizer faced a slew of charges that were all designed to do one thing: to stop us from organizing together. And it didn't work. We worked within our communities, with our allies, we fought back, and we won. We turned it into a human rights challenge, though, that adjusted Toronto policing policies for the better for everyone. And we did more than that. We established sensitivity training for all of the TPS, the Toronto Police Service members. I helped design and deliver that training to every single officer in the service, from the chief on down. And while there is certainly more to be done, we did it together, and I'm extremely proud of that work. And this spirit of challenging unfair systems and practices is what drives me. Whether I'm representing my members in grievances, battling a recalcitrant employer at the bargaining table, leading a 5-week strike of college faculty, or averting one 2 weeks ago, that is what I do. I know that as challenging as our individual jobs and lives are, and as insurmountable as the odds may seem, there is no system, employer, or government that cannot be moved by the power of people, of workers organizing together. And this is exactly what we need to do at OPSEU SEFPO, and why I'm asking you to support my bid for the presidency. We're facing the prospect of a second majority Ford government, and they're going to come at us hard. Taking on this government, whether it's preventing that majority or stopping their agenda, requires standing together and facing them down head on, in the courts, in the legislature, and especially in the streets. It's going to require leadership that is dedicated to supporting creative, educational, organizing, and mobilizing efforts with and besides our members, staff, and allies. But if we're to be ready for this battle, we need to do better at 3 things. We need to listen, we need to organize, and we need to engage. We need to listen to the voices of our members and all those under attack, to hear what they're experiencing, and then to incorporate their wisdom in learning how to move forward. We need to organize, to strengthen the alliances and partnerships within OPSEU SEFPO, with other unions in this movement, and with other organizations that share our values, as well as with the people of this province and this country. And we need to engage. We need to engage our members to improve communication and make it a 2-way process, to build our collective strength and capacity and power. And then we need to take on the forces outside of OPSEU SEFPO who are trying to erode those rights of workers and diminish the quality of life for our members. We need to change the culture of OPSEU SEFPO to one where we behave as though we are always in bargaining, so that members are educated and teams are supported between rounds. We need to connect bargaining teams to each other across sectors, across regions, and work on planning strategy and debriefs so we know where we're going, where we are, and how to get to where we're going. It's not about imposing a one-size-fits-all model on every local or sector or division. It's about listening to one another, sharing best practices, and building strategies that maximize our members' power. We need to map our membership to know who we actually represent, instead of relying on past practices and entrenched beliefs. We need to listen to the voices of those who are marginalized workers within our own union, and address the systemic issues and oppression that are keeping us from true solidarity. I'm going to take a moment and quote myself. When I was at convention in 2019, my bargaining team won the Leah Castleman Award for embodying the spirit of mobilizing to win. And I said then, as long as we stand together and create a big enough, rowdy enough tent, we will help to win a better future for all workers. And that is the key lesson I've learned in my 20 years as an activist and leader within OPSEU SEFPO. When we stand together, we win. And the bigger and the louder and the more diverse we are, the better our lives and future will be. We can start now, and we can start here. because this is the story of what I do. A social problem becomes a movement to build social change. And as you build, you shift the institutions, because the job isn't finished until more permanent, structural, renewable change is in place. And that's what brings me in front of you today. The job isn't done, it's barely getting started. And as a dear friend of mine says, old ways won't open new doors. I'm here for deep renewal and change, and I hope that you are too. Because here's what I know in my bones, what I know OPSEU SEFPO can be and how I think we can get there. We can build that bigger and more inclusive tent that engages all members and renews our union. I'll bring my experience, my knowledge, my incredibly transferable skills to the office of president to work for a transparent and truly democratic union, where equity is a practice and not a buzzword or a performance, where everyone's voices can be heard.
Sit down, the cameraman.
My first steps as president will involve consultation with the EBMs, the equity reps, the divisional and sectoral leaders about their priorities for this term and their goals for our union. That's the first step in developing a strategic plan, and it builds on the work I've been doing and the conversations I've been having over the past year since I first declared my intention to run. I'll hold briefings with each OPSEU SEFPO department and meet directly with the staff unions to identify outstanding issues and set joint priorities. I'll talk to all the major union leaders in Ontario and NUPG affiliates and components across Canada. We're seeing massive transformation in the labor movement, and we must be a leader in shaping that shared future. I want to raise our expectations of what this union can do, but also how you can be a part of that deep and lasting change. I've heard loud and clear that stewards and local presidents need more resources and support. I've heard, though, that the executive board members and committee reps need information in a timely way and better resources for supporting our regions. Education, support, and member engagement is the foundation for worker power and a strong, united board. I've served on a lot of nonprofit boards, community and labor organizations, and campaigns, and I know that the power of the labor movement is in working with social justice movements for deep change, because that's when we are at our most powerful, when we're part of those bigger struggles for justice. And when members see themselves supported to take action, when we stand together and fight, we win. I've done it in my lifetime of activism, I've done it in my division, and I can and will do it as president. I'll center equity, democracy, and transparency along with fiscal responsibility. I'll listen first and promote respectful debate as a unifying voice on the board. I will not condone or be complicit in any board or workplace culture that is rooted in toxicity, reprisal, or fear. I'll work with the other ABMs that you've elected as well as staff to share the best of what each of us do, foster creative approaches to solve problems, and engage our members. And while I have a breadth of knowledge and transferable skills, I have the humility to know that I don't know everything. As the great labor leader and civil rights activist Miles Horton used to say, we make the road by walking it. And I know that the president doesn't and shouldn't walk alone. I know we have to build strong teams, and I will actively seek out those who have skills and strengths that complement my own. I do have a proven track record. I know how to share and create a vision. I know how to move large groups of people to action together in solidarity across time. And I know we have to draw on that spark and that hope in each of us, because we are building a union and it starts with us. In the words of the organizers, the Amazon Labor Union, the power to connect with the people you work with and care about is the power to change the world. I humbly ask you for your support so we can build that power together.